This lesson is about relative URLs. In the previous lesson on hyperlinks, I covered the syntax of this basic URL here. There are a lot of different types of URLs and different parts of the URL and different things you can do with the different parts of the URL to accomplish different things. One of the most common is what's called the relative link or the relative URL. This link here uses a relative URL. Here you see the anchor tag and the href attribute, and within the quotes, the text here.html. Then the link itself, the content of the anchor tag says over here, and this link says here.html. There's no protocol, there's no host name, just a file name effectively. Now, what the browser will do with that is it will say, okay, that's just a file name, so I'm going to look for that file name in the same relative location as the document that is referring to it. So in other words, this file, hyperlinks.html, is located somewhere, and in fact I've uploaded it onto a server so we can see how this works in practice. And so wherever that is, whatever host, whatever protocol, and whatever path, the browser will look in the same location for here.html. You remember up at the top of this page, I had this text. This page is at http://bw.org miscellaneous xhtml links /hyperlinks.html, just like that. I've uploaded this page to my server, and I've loaded it up in Internet Explorer here. You'll notice the address bar here shows that URL, which is exactly the same as this URL here on the page. So if you want, you can even point your browser to that page, and it's probably still there. I intend to leave it there. And you can load up this very page, and you can go along in the exercise. As we roll the mouse over the various URLs on this page, you'll notice the status bar at the bottom shows the location of the actual documents. That shows what the web browser does with the relative URL. It shows how it assembles it into something that's complete, that allows it to construct the web request and go out and do its thing with the server to fetch the document, to retrieve the document, and display it on your screen. So as we roll the mouse over, say this link here, you'll see at the bottom there's the completed URL on the status bar. I can't point at both things at once, but believe me, I'm waving my arms around here in the sound booth. So it takes this URL here, and it takes this part of it all the way up to the file name where the document is that it's currently displaying. And it simply sticks this partial URL on the end there. And it creates that link that you see at the bottom. Now, if it's a little hard to see the status bar here on this movie, just look at it in your own web browser. And whatever web browser you're using, be it Mozilla or Opera or whatever, you can find a way to turn on the status bar and see where the links are going, because that's just part of the basic functionality of a browser. Now, looking at it again in the text editor, we see the partial URL here.html, and looking at it in the web browser, when we click on it, watch the address bar change. All that changed was this part here, here.html. It has now gone out to the web server and retrieved this other document, which says here.html. And we can look at that in our anchors folder. There it is, here.html, loaded up in the text editor, or I can just drag it into this text editor here. And you can see that this document that says this is a link back to the first page is exactly what we're looking at in the browser there, here.html. And I've uploaded all of these documents to my server so that we can experiment with them there. Now we have this link, which goes back to the first page. And you'll notice that it links back to the document we were at before. And here in the text editor, we can see that's just another relative link back to hyperlinks.html, which was our first document, and is this other document here. And so if I click on that in the browser, and you notice it's the visited color because we've already been there. I click on that in the browser and it takes us right back, and now the here.html is in the visited color as well. Now we'll look at another type of a relative URL that uses a subdirectory. Notice this relative URL, which has a subdirectory and a slash and there.html. Now chances are on your desktop computer at home, you're not running Unix. A few of you may be, but most of you are running either Microsoft Windows or Mac OS or something else that uses a different type of a separator for directories. Whatever separator you use, for a URL you must use the /, which is the Unix-ish way to say it, and that's probably just because the first web servers and web browsers were written on Unix, and the whole URL specification uses the /. You don't want to use a backslash, you don't want to use a colon or anything else. You have to use this / to separate your directories. It's just the law, just the way it is. Like the speed of light, you just can't break it. So this is a relative URL that specifies a subdirectory and a file name. And when we look at it in the web browser, you'll notice that this subdirectory will be added to this XHTML links on the status bar when we roll the mouse over the link. See down there, it says XHTML-links /subdir/there.html. So just like the here relative link, the over there relative link just takes everything that's in the link itself and sticks it on the end of the last directory in the path to the current document. So instead of hyperlinks.html, it'll say subdir/there.html when we put the mouse over the link. Now I'm going to click on it, and then there's a link back to the first page. Now, going back up a directory, how does it do that? Well, let's take a look at that also in our text editor, and I'll just drag it into the text editor. And we can see that the link back has this in it, 2 dots. The 2 dots is a shorthand for go up a level in the directory structure. If we look at the browser, we see that we have this subdirectory, and to link back, we want to go back up to the XHTML links directory. So rather than specifying the whole URL we want to go, sometimes it's convenient to just say, go up a directory. And you'll notice that the status bar shows the URL without the subdir. It starts at the current directory, which includes the subdir, and then it goes up one, removing that, and putting in the name of the file. So looking at the link again, here in the text editor, you have the 2 dots and the / and the name of the file. And that'll take us right back to the document where we were before. So that's the over there link. And we see now we have the visited link color. Finally, we have the somewhere else link, which uses the same shorthand notation, the ... to get us back there. And that takes us up a directory, so it'll get rid of this XHTML links. And it'll take us up. And actually, it says else X in the text editor. You'll notice that. The link itself says else-x because I had used else for another lesson. So this says else-x. So you'll notice that the link doesn't actually match the text that I put there on the screen. But that's useful to know that they obviously don't have to be the same thing. So clicking on that, that'll take us to the else-x page, and we can bring that up in the text editor as well and go back up to the else-x and look at that in the text editor, and we'll see that our link back home uses the directory name because now we're up a level, and it tells us what subdirectory to go into from here, which is the XHTML links /hyperlinks.html. And here in the browser, you'll see it puts together that whole URL again down there in the status bar with the XHTML links in it, and that'll take us back to the first page. So that's how the relative URLs work. They're a little bit abstract. If you haven't dealt with directory structures a lot before, it may take a little time to wrap your brain around it all. But it's worth knowing so that you can build websites that have a directory structure without having to depend on the exact directory structure that your server is in. So you can have websites that might work on several different servers, that might be easy to mirror to different places, or things like that, just to make it easy to have the website work in different directory structures. And finally, we have a picture of a URL that you can look at. And this is also up on my website, and you can get to it from the link in this example file. And it simply shows the different parts of a URL. And so when you look at a URL, you can use this to refer to. Most of these you'll never see. You'll rarely see a port. You'll almost never see parameters. You will see queries and fragments, and we're actually going to talk about fragments in another lesson here in this section so that you'll learn about fragments today. query part is for CGI programs, and you'll see that sometimes when you go to a website, someplace like Google, where you've got a search query or something like that. It comes after a question mark, after these other parts. And so that's what a URL looks like. That, of course, is the URL to the picture of the URL. And that explains URLs pretty much well enough that you should be able to use them. Take your time, practice, learn about URLs. URLs are your friend.